It's budget day in the House of Commons when the Chancellor announces his spending plans. But what does it all mean for us? Good evening. It's the day when we find out how the government plans to spend our taxes in the year ahead. The spring budget's been announced by the Chancellor, Philip Hammond. So what was in it? Neil Perry's been finding out.
The Chancellor started this lunchtime selling this budget as the next steps of preparing Britain for a global future. It wasn't a day for big giveaways though, with public finances still tight. But what were some of the main headlines?
I think today one of the main things was the increase in self-employment taxes, and that will be big news for owner-managed businesses, and particularly in our area where we have a lot of self-employed people. We have lots of farmers, lots of people who run consultancy businesses. That's a big story. There's also going to be more childcare support for 3 to 4 year olds, so working parents will be very pleased to see that. And of course there's going to be investment in schools, but we don't know any of those details yet.
Other than that, an extra £2 billion for social care, spread over the next 3 years. There was an increase to the amount you can earn before you pay tax to £11,500. That should take more of the lowest paid out of tax. The announcement of so-called T-levels, their technical versions of A-levels. There were no changes to the taxes on tobacco or alcohol, but we did get confirmation of the long-previewed investment in schools, including more funding for a new generation of selective grammar schools.
So how will the budget affect us here in Norfolk? Here to talk about this is Nova Fairbank from the Norfolk Chamber of Commerce and Andrew Wiltshire, Conservative spokesman for Norwich South. Also with us this evening, James Wright, Liberal Democrat leader on the City Council, and Emma Corlett, who's a Labour County Councillor. Let's start with you, Emma. What did you make of this budget in summary?
I thought it was very disappointing. I was particularly furious about the education announcements about grammar schools and selective education, and I was very, very disappointed about the social care announcements because on the face of it, it looks like more money, but when you take into account over £4 billion has been taken out over the course of the last Parliament, it doesn't even scratch the surface of what we need to provide services locally.
We'll talk about some of those things in a minute. James Wright, what did you think about it?
So again, like Emma, very unhappy with the notion of grammar schools. Not enough money for social care. 2 billion over 3 years. We should be looking at 2 billion per year. Although I would give some praise where it's due. I'm pleased to see the continuation of raising the threshold at which people pay income tax, a continuation of a policy the Liberal Democrats brought in the last government, and also cautious welcome to the T-levels, which I think could be quite interesting.
OK, some criticism from Labour and the Lib Dems. I guess you liked it.
Overall, I think it's a good budget. I mean, the Chancellor's hands are tied because of the national picture, but you think, it's £2 billion more for social care than we would otherwise be seeing. It's on top of another £7 billion to come into over the course of the rest of this Parliament for the NHS, and there's extra money there for childcare. There's changes to the way that you pay for childcare as well, and it says there's T levels which on the face of it could be a good thing.
Okay, from a business perspective, what did you make of the budget?
From a business perspective, I think it was a cautious budget, quite a safe budget. However, we are disappointed at the lack of reform on business rights.
OK, well, one of the more high-profile pre-announcements in this budget was the extra £320 million to pay for 110 new schools, which could include grammar schools if the law is changed to allow it. Let's hear from one Norwich head teacher about this issue. But first, Theresa May.
We have protected the core schools budget, but crucially what we're announcing is £500 million of investment in schools, 320 million of which will be new schools. That will create around 70,000 new school places. What this is about is ensuring that people can know that their child will have a good school place and all the opportunities that provides for them.
So, Theresa May, they're quite positive about this, but you're worried about it. Why are you so worried about the grammar schools?
Because I think you should make policy based on evidence, and there is absolutely no evidence that grammar schools do anything for social mobility, one thing that Norwich has been criticised for. They have disproportionately smaller numbers of pupils eligible for free school meals. And I think in real terms, when for the first time schools are seeing their budgets cut in real terms, I know head teachers are very, very, very disappointed that there's announcement for this, yet they're actually struggling to cover their existing cost commitments as well. So it's just not evidence-based.
Let's hear just a moment from one of those teachers, Claire Jones from BIGNOLD Primary School.
This feels to me like a slight slap in the face that we have to continue with potentially hugely reduced budgets while there is a whole new project where no research says that it's actually going to help. Put more investment into our local schools to have really good quality education, which is about education for all and not on a basis of selection.
So quite a lot of frustration from some head teachers that there's money for new free schools, but actually their budgets are being cut.
Well, it's money for new schools. I mean, they will be free schools, but they are also new schools. And, we're talking about there's a huge gap. In fact, the Leader of the Opposition asked about lack of school places at Prime Minister's questions ahead of the budget. The government's got an enormous amount of work to do to make sure that with a growing population, we've got the places for those children to go to. And it's 110 schools that we're talking about, which is roughly 0.5% of all the schools in England. So we're not talking about a huge number. But the other thing that we all keep talking about is we keep talking about grammar schools as they were in the 1970s. But the government hasn't said that that's what grammar schools are going to be. I think part of the problem here is the government hasn't said this is how we see selective education working, this is what we're going to do. What the Prime Minister has been clear about is about helping the brightest children be able to access kind of that sort of a more rigorous kind of academic programme. But of course what none of us want to see is that takes away from kind of our other local schools, or that children who aren't as academic suffer as a result.
Does that reassure you?
Well, no, not really. In fact, what we already know is £36 million is coming out of school budgets across the county. We're talking somewhere in the region of 1,000 teacher posts that could be lost as a result of that. So, I don't think that money should be going into these vanity projects of new types of school. I accept the point that there is a pressure on school places and new schools need to be looked at. I took real issue with the Chancellor talking about funding transport for children that go to selective schools, but what about regular community schools? Do those children not need help with getting to school themselves?
One of the other things that was talked about is T-levels, technical qualifications which will replace some A-levels. A business perspective on that, a good thing?
A business perspective would be, it is a good thing. However, fundamentally, this all needs to change from the secondary school level, from probably age 14 and possibly even less, to ensure that the national curriculum reflects the need for a business and enterprise focus. We need work-ready students to come out of the schools with good qualifications, no matter what type of school they went to.
Is that not happening now?
To a certain extent it is. They're coming out with really good qualifications. They don't have the soft skills. Simple things like picking up a phone to talk to somebody is something that is very daunting for most young people. They're so used to using social media and their smart devices, they don't know how to communicate one-on-one. These are the things that the schools need to help us to teach them.
Are the T-levels positive thing?
I would say it's not just about having young people come out of school being ready for work, it's actually them being ready to be good citizens that can communicate. And I think there's been a real problem with the narrowing of the school curriculum. Schools have a duty to provide an education that's accessible for all young people, but if you look at the number of exclusions that have rocketed in Norfolk, that's because some young people have been very poorly served by, and I'm not blaming the schools, they've been under huge pressure and have had to narrow the curriculum, but we're reaping the cost of that, or sadly young people are. There was very little detail on that, so I'd need to look at the detail. In principle, it's not something that I'm against, but it's making sure that that's open to all people, and you don't get a class divide where children from certain backgrounds are channelled down a particular direction and those from a different background aren't. And again, it links in with the selective stuff, dead against selection.
We don't want to return to the old secondary
No,
model.
absolutely not.
And we do have one school in Norfolk that already teaches technical qualifications from the age of 14, so there's some progress being made in our area at least, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is definitely, talking about soft skills. I have a real issue with the way that we test youngsters at the end of Key Stage 4 and they're 16. We do things in silos. Businesses after youngsters that can work collaboratively together and use the tools that are available. And I don't think the school system's doing that at the moment.
In fairness to the schools, they are working really hard. It needs to start at a government level, right at the top, and it needs a change to the national curriculum. other than that, the schools are under pressure. They've got too much they already have to do. They need to have that word from the top that gives them the power to be able to deliver some of the things that we need in the future business.
One of the other things that came up and was mentioned earlier was the changes to self-employment national insurance contributions. Now, the Chancellor's keen on protecting people who earn the least, but for some self-employed people, builders, plumbers, they might be frustrated, worried about this. Can you reassure them?
Well, I think the Chancellor said that the national insurance contributions will go up by 1% next year and 1% the year after. It's not a 2% hike. I think the other thing that we need to be aware of is that kind of the Class 2 national insurance contributions, which were a flat level, have gone. They're going in April of next year, so it's only Class 4 contributions we're talking about. But the Chancellor's also said that they're going to consult over the summer about some of the things that are still very unfair about people who are self-employed, in particular kind of parental leave, whether that's paternity leave, obviously shared parental leave, maternity leave. So well, actually, it's one of the big disparities at the moment, whereas things like pensions and other benefits, they're much more equal now if you're self-employed. So
it's about being fair, is that what he's trying to do?
That's what the Chancellor stressed in his speech. It's about trying to kind of level the playing field and make it fair, whilst also sort of addressing some concerns that there might be some self-employed people who are also looking sort of, where can I save money on my tax bill? Is this an attractive way to go?
Is it fair over this side, Emma, James?
I think self-employed people have taken a real hit over the last, I think in real terms their income has dropped by about 20% over the last 10 years. I'm also really concerned, so that's going to put them under increasing pressure. I'm also concerned about the number of people that are kind of being forced into self-employment when it's not really viable. I've been supporting people who've been really put under pressure by the DWP to go down the self-employed route, even though they don't have a viable business plan to get them off the unemployment figures. So I think if you're doing well as a self-employed person, you might be able to absorb that, but there's lots of people who are self-employed who are really, really struggling.
I mean, to give the Chancellor his dues, he's also looked at people who are self-employed through limited companies and removed some of their tax breaks. So, ticking the box there. But I think politically, we've got to look at this for what it is. In the 2015 Conservative Party manifesto, there was a commitment to not raise national insurance contributions, and that's exactly what the Chancellor has done today.
OK, all right, well, stay with us. After the break, we'll be talking about what else was announced in the spring budget and how it will affect Norfolk. Welcome back. Tonight we're talking about the budget after the government's latest spending plans were announced by the Chancellor Philip Hammond this afternoon. On the panel tonight, Nova Fairbank from the Norfolk Chamber of Commerce and Andrew Wiltshire, who's the Conservative spokesman for Norwich South. Representing the Liberal Democrats on the City Council is James Wright and Labour County Councillor Emma Corlett. So we've heard about money for new schools, but what do the people of Norwich want to hear? We went to find out.
More social care for the elderly. I think it's very, very important that for those who are housebound and have limited mobility, they are suffering.
I think the NHS is a real crisis point. I think we have a shortage of staff, we have a shortage of money, and I think it would really benefit the UK if we could have more funding for the NHS.
Make it not so advantageous to be a landlord. Put some sort of tax threshold in there for them so that young people who deserve a home can get a home.
I would like to see him do a little bit more for the pensions. I know we're told that we're living too long, but we're the ones who have put everything into the system, and I do think we are entitled just a little.
I would like to see the tax levels raised before you pay tax, so it goes from 10 up to 15. Because I think £15,000 to a lot of people who work in London is absolutely peanuts.
Well, lots of things to talk about there, but let's start with the NHS and social care. £2 billion over 3 years. It's got to be better than nothing.
Well, it is better than nothing, but like I said, it's a drop in the ocean really compared to over £4 billion has been taken out over the last Parliament just from social care. In real terms, when you look at what's happened in the NHS, it's a cut. If you look at how much demand has gone up, we've seen how many of our local NHS trusts have been really struggling locally.
And the county councils really, you're on the county council, they're really struggling with this, aren't they, financially?
Hugely. We've made decisions that I thought we would never ever have to go anywhere near, and I am worried about the risk to safety, but I think people will be really puzzled at why their council tax is going to go up at the same time as services are getting worse. Normally people equate paying more taxes with thinking things are going to get better, but the reality is we are asking them to pay more council tax to try and plug that gap. This 2 billion isn't going to plug that gap, so their services will get worse, but they'll be paying more money, and people will not understand that, quite rightly.
Well, let's ask Andrew Wiltshire to respond to that. Services getting worse, but taxes going up. Is that how it is?
I don't think that's always how it is. I think the £2 billion is £2 billion more than nothing. But I mean, Emma's right, and I think that everybody would say the same thing. That there is a social care crisis, and this is not a recent problem. I worked in social care for over 7 years. The problem is that actually, long term, no government of any stripe has taken a long, hard look at kind of where demographic pressures are going to hit. Hasn't really grasped the issue of actually what do we do about an ageing population with an increasing number of people who've got dementia or kind of long-term health conditions. What do we want to do about sort of particularly a group of older people who, quite understandably, aren't necessarily interested in being cared for in a care home and want to stay at home. And then kind of all of a sudden this has really hit home, and it's getting a lot of media attention. But for years this has been an issue that people working in the NHS, people working in social care have known about, but it's not reached headlines.
But it is a political choice. You didn't have to give tax cuts, billions of tax cuts to already wealthy individuals and corporations and not close tax loopholes. So it is a choice. It's not saying that we can't just do it because of demographic
you say not close
pressures.
Tax loopholes. We heard from the Chancellor earlier on that we're collecting, I think it's £140 billion more since 2010, have one of the smallest tax gaps in the world, not in the G7, not kind of out of European partners, in the world. We collect far more tax than a number of our other partners. Yes, everyone's got to pay their fair share, but we've also got statistics that show that actually we've raised more through taxation, more through lowering things like corporation tax, because people aren't taking their business overseas, they are investing in the UK. And if we put corporation tax up, or if we put it back to where it was kind of at the end of the last Labour government.
I mean, maybe we need to have a sort of honest discussion around a hypothecated tax that's simply for the NHS and social care. So there is some ring fencing that goes on.
What does that mean for us?
Well, so it's that whole, let's put 2p on the pound for income tax, and that money is guaranteed to go over to health and social care. I mean, the Lib Dems are calling for an extra 4 billion today. We said there needs to be 2 billion per year for social care, 1.5 billion for innovation within the NHS, and another £500 million for mental health services.
Lots of ideas for the future, and the Chancellor did say he would consult on that over the summer, but lots of other things came up, and one of them was 270 million to keep the UK at the forefront of science and development. And I wonder, Nova, do you think that will benefit Norwich? Because we do have the research part here.
We do. We have some world-class research facilities here. We've got lots of potential, and there's lots of innovation happening, so anything that will help support that is absolutely welcome.
What would you like to see happen in terms of research for Norwich? I mean, is it a growth sector for us?
Absolutely. I mean, together with the Cambridge and the A11 growth corridor, these are all really key areas for our region, and the potential we have is unlimited, and we already have the world-class services. We just need to make more of a big deal about them.
Okay, well, one of the other things being discussed was business rates, and it's been a regular talking point in the run-up to the budget. Changes have been made which will mean some businesses will end up paying more, but the Chancellor's announced a relief fund for companies. Will it make a difference? We spoke to STEFAN Gurney from Norwich Business Improvement District.
I think that's just a bit of a sticky plaster, to be honest. They know that this is going to be a concern for a lot of businesses, and in some areas you're going to see huge raises. So what they're looking to do is just to put that in over a period of time, and that's what this rates relief is looking at. It's just saying that we will wait over the next year, 2 years, 3 years to implement the full rates increase.
Over Fairbank, are you reassured about this change? Is it going to be any better, or is it still a bit of a worry?
There are businesses in Norfolk that will benefit from the new support. However, as Stefan's already pointed out, it is just a sticking plaster without some serious reforms. The Chamber Network's been calling on the Chancellor to change the fiscal policy from neutrality to try and ensure the business system works much better. At the moment, we're locked in an outdated system, and today's reforms effectively just shift the burden onto another set of shoulders.
You run a small business, don't you, James Wright? I mean, do you think it's going to help small businesses, this change?
I think it's what we've heard today is negligible in terms of what it's going to actually do to businesses on the ground, and there does need to be some fundamental thought given to how we restructure the whole way about taxing businesses, particularly as we understand that that's effectively going to be paying for local services over the next few years.
One of the really positive things the Chancellor said today is that there'll be a review into actually how we tax other companies that are based online and don't use bricks and mortar. And in the lead up to today's announcements, he's talked actually we need to look at a model that's fit for the future, because of course lots of small businesses in particular don't necessarily need a premises, they don't need a shop. So it's about how do you make sure that kind of everyone's paying their fair rate of tax.
The UK has some of the highest property business taxes in the developed world. They hammer businesses with sky-high costs before they've even turned over a penny. We absolutely need to change this. It undermines businesses' ability to invest, and obviously that's not going to create economic growth and jobs.
There's a real lack of joined-up thinking as well in two different policy announcements. I mean, I've been speaking to people who are governors of nursery schools. We've got this announcement about, places for 3 and 4 year olds. Some of them are being really hammered, been really hit by this increase in business tax. The money that we're getting from government isn't actually sufficient. We've got nurseries telling us they're viable. We are not going to have enough places across Norfolk for 3 and 4 year old provision. So on the one hand, you're saying, yeah, you've got to do this, but then you're hammering, nursery schools with this business rate. So it's not joined up at all.
Okay, one of the other things was the tax threshold, and that was mentioned by some of the people we spoke to in Norwich. The tax threshold's going up. You can earn £11,500 before you'll have to pay tax. Do you welcome that?
Yeah, I think that's going to help the worst off. It doesn't really do anything to tackle the insecure employment that we've got there, obviously, with 0 hours contracts, people not knowing what they're going to earn from one week to another. But yeah, it is a positive thing, but I still have those concerns about just the instability of employment. Lots of people juggling 2 or 3 different jobs just to make ends meet.
And the living wage is going up to £7.50 in April. A positive thing? Or does it create problems for businesses?
Well, I think the whole notion of living wage, and we've got the living wage as defined by the government, which is not a living wage as defined by the Living Wage Foundation, and it's quite frankly not enough. I appreciate that businesses will have find difficulties with that. Norwich City Council, I've supported them for the fact that they are a living wage employer and encourage other employers in Norwich to do the same thing.
Okay, just briefly, money for roads. In the north, 90 million. In the Midlands, 23 million. Nothing in the east, though. That's disappointing, isn't it?
Well, there is nothing in the east, but we've got £300 million of A47 improvements. We've just finished, relatively recently finished dualling the A11, and there's £690 million available for schemes to help ease urban congestion. Grand scheme of things, £690 million, not a lot of money. Urban areas in Norfolk, I'm sure that everybody's going to say that we're congested, we want some of that money, but it's not nothing. We've got, as I say, £300 million for the A47. I think we've been allocated our money, and it's come in this Parliament.
Do you feel we've done quite well in recent years?
I think we've done reasonably well. I think we could still do better, and it'd be nice to see to get particularly to see David Cameron arriving as he said he would at the A47 to get it dualled. But I think we've got some of that work in train already.
In terms of the Norfolk as an area, we are lagging so far behind the rest of the country that yes, the investment that's already been put there is fantastic news. We've still yet to see it be delivered. We're still not looking at the improvements on the A47 being delivered until probably 2023. So there is more work to be done, and we do need more investment. We have lagged behind the rest of the UK, so therefore I believe we are entitled to more investment. It's up to us to make the business case to show that we need it.
We're almost out of time. What key difference do you think people will notice in 6 months or a year from this budget?
I think one of the big differences for people with young family will be the changes that are being made, not just to 3 and 4 year old funding, but actually to the tax deductibility, because at the moment childcare vouchers are capped, and the government's changing that. So you'll have, I think, can deduct up to £2,000. So I think the changes that are being made are worth up to £5,000 per child of 3 years if both parents are working. So I think there's a huge change there.
Very briefly, what change will people notice?
I think sadly people's services are still going to be getting worse, and they'll be puzzled why they're paying more.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. It's been a really interesting discussion. Thank you for making the time to talk to us. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for this evening. If you'd like to add your comments to the debate, you can find us on the Mustard TV Facebook page. We're also on Twitter @MustardThisWeek. Good night.